The day the vultures circled my body, everyone in the town of Red Dust thought I was gone. They thought the desert had finally claimed my bones. They thought my story was over. But 6 months later, I walked right through the doors of the saloon, and the man who put a bullet in my back dropped his whiskey glass in pure terror. To understand how a dead man walks, you have to know who saved me. You have to know the secret she uncovered. Before we continue, if you are new on my channel, please click on the subscribe button, like this video, comment where you are listening from, and share with your friends. Let's continue. But most importantly, you have to know how the betrayal started. My name is Thorne. I was a rider for the Iron Canyon Ranch. I worked hard. I followed the rules. I trusted the men I rode with. I treated them like family, especially Kael. Kael was my best friend. We fought together. We bled together. I would have taken a bullet for him, but I never expected the bullet to come from him. We were riding through the deep canyons. We were carrying a heavy lockbox for our boss, a powerful man named Voss. The sun was hot. The air was dry. We stopped our horses near a small creek to drink. I kneeled by the water. I washed the dust from my face. I felt safe, but what happened next changed everything. I heard the loud click of a gun right behind my head. I froze. I did not turn around. I knew the sound of Kael's revolver. "I am sorry, Thorne," Kael whispered. His voice did not sound angry. It sounded cold, empty. Before I could speak, fire ripped through my back. The sound of the gunshot echoed off the canyon walls. I fell forward. My face hit the wet dirt. Pain exploded in my chest. It was sharp. It was terrible. I could not breathe. I heard Kael walk away. I heard him take the lockbox. I heard him get on his horse. He did not look back. He just rode away, leaving me to bleed out in the mud. But none of us knew the real truth yet. Kael did not shoot me just for the money. He was not a greedy man. Someone else ordered him to do it. Someone I trusted with my whole life. But I would not learn that dark secret until much later. Hours passed. The sun climbed high into the sky. It felt like fire on my skin. My blood soaked into the red dirt. My throat was as dry as bone. I tried to move, but my body refused. I was paralyzed by the pain. I looked up at the sky. Black birds were making circles above me. They were waiting for me to stop breathing. I closed my eyes. I thought about my life. I thought about my mistakes. A deep sadness filled my heart. I was going to die alone in the dirt, betrayed by my brother, forgotten by the world. I prepared myself for the end. But my story did not end in that canyon, because someone was watching me. I heard a soft sound, like a footstep in the dry grass. I opened my eyes slowly. My vision was blurry, but I saw a shape standing over me. It was a girl. She wore leather clothing. She had dark hair and dark eyes. She was an Apache. Her name was Talasi. By all the rules of the Wild West, she should have walked away. The white men in my town hated her people. Her people hated the white men. We were enemies. If her tribe found her with me, she would be punished. If my people found her with me, they would kill her. She stood there in silence. She looked at my wound. She looked at my face. I tried to speak. "Water," I whispered. My voice was broken. Talasi did not move. She just stared at me. She was deciding if I should live or die. It would be so easy for her to leave me. It would be safer for her. What she did next changed the course of both our lives forever. She knelt beside me. She took a small skin bag from her belt. She gently lifted my head. She pressed the bag to my lips. Cool water flowed into my mouth. It tasted like life. I drank slowly. I could not stop looking at her eyes. They were brave. They were kind. "Why?" I asked. She did not answer. Instead, she grabbed my arms. She was small, but she was very strong. She pulled me. The pain in my back screamed. Everything went black. I passed out from the agony. When I finally opened my eyes again, the world was dark. I was not under the hot sun. I was inside a cool cave. A small fire burned in the center. The smell of burning wood and sweet herbs filled the air. I was lying on a soft bed of animal skins. My shirt was gone. My wound was wrapped tightly with clean white cloth. The pain was still there, but it was a dull ache now. I turned my head. Talasi was sitting by the fire. She was crushing green leaves with a stone. "You are awake," she said. Her English was slow, but easy to understand. "Where am I?" I asked. "Safe," she replied softly. "In the high rocks. The birds cannot find you here. The bad men cannot find you here." I tried to sit up. It felt like a knife twisting in my back. I groaned and fell back down. "Do not move," she warned. "The bullet went through. It missed your heart. But you are very weak. You lost too much blood." I stared at the cave ceiling. Tears stung my eyes. Not from the physical pain, but from the memory. Kael, my brother. He really tried to kill me. "Why did you save me?" I asked her again. "Your people. They are at war with mine." Talasi stopped crushing the leaves. She looked into the fire. The orange light danced on her face. "A dying dog still deserves water," she said. "And I saw your eyes in the canyon. You did not have the eyes of a killer. You had the eyes of a man who was broken." She understood me. Even though we had just met, she saw my pain. For the next 2 weeks, Talasi kept me hidden. She was incredible. Every morning, she left the cave before the sun came up. She hunted for rabbits. She gathered fresh berries. She brought fresh water. She risked her life every single day. If the men from my ranch found her, they would show no mercy. At night, she changed my bandages. She put the crushed green paste on my wound. It burned like fire, but it stopped the infection. We started talking more. I told her about my life. I told her about the ranch. I told her about Kael. "He was my brother," I said. My voice was bitter. "I trusted him." "Trust is a dangerous thing," Talasi said quietly. "It is like a wild horse. If you are not careful, it will throw you to the ground." She was right. I felt so foolish. I reached down to my side. I wanted to hold my gun. It always made me feel safe. But my holster was empty. "He took my gun," I said angrily. "Kael took everything." But Talasi shook her head. "He did not take everything," she said. This is the moment that changed my whole understanding of the betrayal. Talasi reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, shiny object. She walked over to my bed. She dropped it into my hand. "I found this in the mud," she said. "Right where you fell. The man who shot you dropped it." I held the object up to the firelight. It was a silver coin. But it was not a normal coin. It had a deep scratch shaped like a star on one side. My heart completely stopped. The air left my lungs. I knew this coin. It did not belong to Kael. Kael never carried silver. This coin belonged to Voss, the boss of the Iron Canyon Ranch, the man who raised me since I was an orphan, the man I looked up to like a father. Kael did not plan this robbery. Voss did. Voss ordered Kael to kill me. Voss wanted me dead. The realization hit me harder than the bullet. The man I loved like a father wanted to erase me from the earth. But why? What did I do? What did I know? Anger, hot and violent, began to boil inside my chest. "I have to go back," I said. I pushed myself up. My muscles shook. "I have to find them. I have to make them pay." Talasi pushed me hard back onto the bed. "You are a fool," she hissed. "You cannot even stand. If you leave this cave, you will die before the sun goes down." "I don't care," I shouted. "They betrayed me." "You will care when you are dead," she shouted back. Suddenly, a sound echoed outside the cave. We both froze. It was the sound of loose rocks falling. Someone was walking up the secret path. Talasi quickly covered the fire with dirt. The cave went completely dark. She grabbed her hunting knife. Her hand was shaking. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped right outside the cave entrance. Then, a low, deep voice spoke. It was speaking Apache, but it did not sound friendly. It sounded angry, demanding. Talasi closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. We had been found. The dark cave felt like a cold tomb. The heavy footsteps stopped right outside the entrance. The voice spoke again. It was harsh. It sounded like thunder rolling through the canyon. Talasi gripped her hunting knife. She stepped in front of my bed. She was protecting me. She was willing to die for a man she barely knew. A tall shadow walked into the dim light of the cave. It was a fierce Apache warrior. His face was painted with white ash. He wore an eagle feather in his dark hair. In his hand, he carried a long, sharp spear. His name was Chatan. He was Talasi's older brother. Chatan looked at the dead fire. Then he looked at Talasi. Finally, his dark eyes locked onto me. I saw pure hatred in his stare. He raised his spear and pointed it right at my chest. "He is the enemy," Chatan said in Apache. I did not know the words, but I understood his tone. Talasi shouted back at him. She pushed the tip of his spear away. She spoke fast and loud. She pointed at my bleeding back. She pointed at my empty gun holster. She was telling him I was no threat, but Chatan did not listen. He pushed Talasi aside. He walked right up to my bed. He pressed the cold metal tip of the spear against my throat. "You bring death to our home," Chatan said in broken, heavy English. I looked up at him. I did not blink. I did not beg for my life. After what Kael and Voss did to me, I was so tired. The betrayal hurt more than the bullet. I just wanted the pain to stop. "Then kill me," I whispered. "Get it over with." Chatan stared at me for a long time. The cave was completely silent, but what he did next shocked me to my core. He lowered the spear. He stepped back. A look of disgust washed over his face. "Death is too easy for a coward who wants to die," Chatan spit out. He turned his back to me and looked at his sister. "The white men are riding through the valley," Chatan told Talasi. "There are 30 of them. They have dogs. They are burning the grass. They are looking for something." My heart started to beat faster. 30 men? That was the entire crew of the Iron Canyon Ranch. "They are looking for the stolen lockbox," I said softly. Chatan slowly turned his head. A dark smile crept onto his face. It was a terrifying smile. "No, dead man," Chatan said. "They are not looking for a box. They are looking for a body. Your boss put a massive bounty on your head, but he only pays if they bring your head back." I froze. The air left my lungs. None of this made sense. Why would Voss send 30 men to find a dead body? I was just a simple ranch rider. I had no money. I had no family. If Kael stole the lockbox, Voss should be hunting Kael. Why was he hunting me? Then, a sudden memory hit me like a train. It was a secret I had buried deep in my mind. A secret I did not realize was important. I remembered the day before the shooting. I had walked into Voss's private office. He did not hear me come in. I saw him putting a small black book inside the iron lockbox. The book fell open on the desk. I saw a list of names. Beside every name was a date and a large amount of money. I recognized the names. They were the names of local farmers who had been murdered in the night. Their lands had all been mysteriously bought by Voss the very next day. Voss was not a cattle boss. He was a monster. He was paying outlaws to kill innocent families so he could steal the entire valley. And Voss saw me looking at the book. He smiled at me that day. He patted my shoulder. He told me I was his best man. He was lying. That was the moment he signed my death warrant. My blood turned to ice. Voss did not just want me dead. He needed to be absolutely sure I could never speak. Kael had betrayed me, but Voss was the true snake in the grass. "They will not stop until they find you," Chatan said. "And if they find you here, they will slaughter my whole tribe." He was right. I was a curse to these people. "I will leave," I said. I tried to stand up. My legs shook violently. Fire shot up my spine. My vision went black. I collapsed back onto the animal skins. Talasi rushed to my side. She glared at her brother. "He cannot walk," she yelled at Chatan. "If you throw him out, you are murdering him yourself." Chatan looked at me with cold eyes. "He has 2 weeks," Chatan said. "When the moon is full, he leaves, or I will cut his throat myself." Chatan turned and walked out of the cave. For the next 14 days, I fought a war inside my own body. The physical pain was terrible, but the mental pain was much worse. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kael pulling the trigger. I saw Voss smiling at me. I felt the bitter sting of absolute betrayal. They threw me away like garbage. But Talasi was my anchor. She never left my side. She fed me warm broth. She changed my bloody bandages. She sang soft Apache songs when the fever made me shake in the night. I watched her closely. She was so different from the people in my world. My people lied for money. My people killed for land. Talasi only cared about life. She was fierce, but her heart was pure. Slowly, I began to heal. The hole in my back closed into an ugly, thick scar. I could finally stand. I could finally walk without falling. But I had a big problem. I had no weapons. Kael had taken my revolver and my rifle. A man without a gun in the Wild West is a dead man walking. One afternoon, Talasi walked into the cave. She held out her hand. She was holding an old Apache hunting knife. It had a sharp, curved blade and a handle made from deer bone. "Take it," she said. I took the knife. It felt heavy and balanced in my hand. "I do not know how to fight with a blade," I admitted. "I am a rifleman." Talasi smiled faintly. "Guns make men brave from far away," she said. "A gun makes it easy to kill, but a knife forces you to look your enemy in the eyes. It forces you to feel their last breath. It is honest." From that day on, she trained me. She taught me how to move silently over dry leaves. She taught me how to hide my shadow in the rocks. She taught me how to strike fast and hard. My anger fueled my training. I imagined Kael's face on every tree I struck. I imagined Voss's dark smile. I was changing. The simple cowboy who trusted everyone died in the canyon. A new man was waking up inside me. A dangerous man. I also realized something else. I was falling in love with the girl who saved me. One evening, we sat by the small fire. The sun was setting, turning the sky dark purple. I looked at Talasi. Her face was beautiful in the firelight. "Why do you do so much for me?" I asked her. "Your brother is right. I am only bringing danger to you." She looked down at her hands. "Because my world is full of angry men," she said softly. "My brother is angry. The white men are angry. But under your anger, Thorne, I see a good man. The world needs good men to stay alive." I reached out and gently touched her hand. Her skin was warm. She did not pull away. For one perfect moment, I forgot about the betrayal. I forgot about the revenge. I just wanted to stay in this cave with her forever. But peace is a lie in the Wild West. Suddenly, a thick smell filled the cave. It was the smell of burning pine. Talasi stood up fast. We both ran to the mouth of the cave. We looked down into the deep valley. The night sky was glowing bright orange. Huge flames were eating the forest. Thick black smoke covered the stars. Voss's men were tired of searching. They were burning the entire valley to flush me out. They were going to burn the Apache hunting grounds to ash. "No," Talasi whispered. Tears filled her eyes. "The winter animals, the sacred trees, they are destroying everything." My chest felt tight. This was my fault. Voss was doing this because I was still breathing. Chatan suddenly appeared on the path. He was covered in black soot. He was breathing hard. He pointed his bloody spear at me. "The white devils are burning our world," Chatan screamed. "They found our lower camp. They shot 2 of our elders. This is the blood you bring, dead man." I looked at the fire. I looked at the tears on Talasi's face. The guilt crushed me. I had to end this. I had to protect the only person who cared about me. "I am leaving," I said. My voice was cold as steel. "Thorne, no!" Talasi cried. She grabbed my arm. "You are not strong enough. There are 30 of them. You will die." I gently pulled my arm away. I looked deep into her dark eyes. "My heart died in the canyon, Talasi," I told her. "But you gave me a reason to fight again. I will not let them hurt your people anymore. I am going to cut the head off the snake." I took the bone knife. I tied a piece of black cloth around my face. I walked past Chatan. He did not try to stop me. He just watched me vanish into the dark smoke. It took me 3 brutal days to walk across the desert. I moved only at night. I wore Apache clothes. I was a ghost haunting the red rocks. Finally, I saw the wooden buildings of Red Dust, my old home. It was past midnight. The town was quiet. The only light came from the big saloon at the end of the street. I climbed onto the roof of the general store. I jumped silently onto the saloon roof. I moved like Talasi taught me. I made 0 noise. I crept toward the glass skylight on the roof. I looked down into the main room. The saloon was empty, except for one large table in the back. My blood boiled instantly. Sitting at the table was Kael. He was drinking expensive whiskey from a whole bottle. He was laughing, and worst of all, he was wearing my favorite leather jacket, the one he stripped off my bleeding body. He looked so happy. He looked rich. He felt 0 regret for putting a bullet in my back. I gripped my bone knife. I was ready to smash through the glass. I was ready to drop down and end his miserable life right there. But what happened next stopped my heart completely. The saloon doors opened. Someone walked inside. Kael smiled wildly and stood up. He opened his arms. A woman walked over to his table. She was wearing a beautiful silk dress. She had bright golden hair. It was Vespera. Vespera was the woman I loved. Vespera was the woman who promised to marry me next spring. We had picked out a small piece of land to build a house. I watched in pure horror. Vespera did not look sad that I was dead. She looked thrilled. She walked right into Kael's arms. She wrapped her hands around his neck, and she kissed him deeply. My whole world shattered into pieces. Kael didn't just take my life. He didn't just take the money. He took my future, and she helped him do it. I watched Vespera kiss the man who murdered me. My chest felt like it was crushed by a heavy stone. I loved her. I gave her everything. I worked in the hot sun for 5 years just to buy her a silver ring. I built fences until my hands bled so we could have a future. I looked closer through the dirty glass of the skylight. My heart broke completely. On Vespera's hand, the silver ring was shining in the light. Kael did not just steal my life. He gave my own ring to my future wife, and she accepted it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash through the glass and kill them both right there. Anger burned my throat like cheap whiskey, but I stopped myself. Talasi's voice echoed in my mind. Anger makes men loud. Quiet men are the ones who survive. I did not break the glass. I backed away into the shadows. I had a better plan, a much darker plan. I climbed down the wooden wall of the saloon. I moved like a ghost. I made 0 noise. I walked around to the back door. It was unlocked. I slipped inside. The back hallway was dark and smelled like old beer and cigar smoke. I stood in the shadows near their table. They could not see me. You are so brave, Kael, Vespera said sweetly. She poured him another glass of whiskey. Thorne was so weak. I am glad he is gone. Kael laughed loudly. He drank the whiskey in one gulp. Thorne was a fool. Kael smiled. He trusted everyone. He practically dug his own grave. I stepped out of the dark. I stood right behind Kael's chair. Hello, brother, I whispered. The silence in the room was deafening. Kael froze completely. His hand was still holding the empty glass in the air. He stopped breathing. Vespera looked up at me. Her face turned perfectly white. Her eyes went wide with pure terror. She dropped the whiskey bottle. It shattered on the wooden floor. Ghost, Kael choked out. He did not turn around. His whole body began to shake violently. No, Kael, I said softly. Just a man you failed to finish. Slowly, Kael turned his head. When he saw my face, he started to cry. Real, ugly tears fell down his cheeks. The brave killer was gone. He was just a coward in a stolen jacket. Thorne, please, Vespera cried out. She fell to her knees. She grabbed my boots. He forced me. Kael forced me to be with him. I thought you were dead. I always loved you. I looked down at her crying face. But what she did not know was that I saw the truth through the roof. You did not look forced when you kissed him, I said cold and hard. Keep the ring, Vespera. It matches your black heart. I kicked my boot free from her hands. I reached down and grabbed my revolver from Kael's belt. The heavy gun felt perfect in my hand again. I pointed the barrel right between his eyes. Kael raised his hands to his face. He sobbed like a child. "Don't shoot, please," Kael begged. "Voss made me do it. Voss threatened to kill me if I didn't shoot you." "You pulled the trigger, Kael," I said. "You left me for the vultures." My finger rested on the trigger. I wanted to pull it. I wanted to see him fall, but I remembered the Apache bone knife in my belt. I remembered Talasi. I was not a cold-blooded killer anymore. I spun the gun and hit Kael hard across the side of his head with the heavy metal handle. Kael's eyes rolled back. He collapsed onto the floor, completely unconscious. I looked at Vespera. She was shaking in the corner. "When he wakes up, tell him to run," I told her. "Because if I ever see his face again, I will not use the heavy end of the gun." I turned to leave, but before I walked out the door, Vespera spoke. "Thorne, wait," she warned. "Voss knows you might be alive. He is leaving tonight. He is taking the black book and the stolen gold." I stopped. I turned my head slightly. "Where is he?" I asked. Vespera swallowed hard. "The train station. He hired 5 killers from the Badlands to protect him. You cannot win, Thorne. They will slaughter you." I did not answer her. I just walked out into the cold night. The train station was at the edge of town. A large, black steam train was waiting on the tracks. Thick white smoke blew into the dark sky. I hid behind a stack of wooden crates. I watched the platform. Vespera was right. There were 5 large men with rifles walking around the train. They looked dangerous. They were looking in the shadows for any movement. In the center of the platform stood Voss. He wore a fancy black suit and a tall hat. He was smoking an expensive cigar. Beside him was the heavy iron lockbox, the box I carried for him, the box that held the black book of his terrible crimes. He was escaping. He was going to take the stolen land money and live like a king in the East, and his men were going to keep burning the Apache Valley until nothing was left. I had to stop him now. I put my revolver away. A gunshot would bring all 5 men running. I needed to be a ghost. I pulled out the Apache bone knife. I crawled under the wooden platform. The smell of dirt and train oil was strong. I moved silently under the floorboards until I was right below the first guard. I waited for the train engine to blow steam. Hiss! The loud noise covered my movement. I reached up, grabbed the guard's boot, and pulled him down into the dark under the platform. I struck fast. He did not make a sound. 1 down, 4 left. I climbed out from under the platform near the back of the train. I moved from shadow to shadow. Talasi taught me how to walk without snapping a single twig. On the hard wooden boards, I was completely silent. In 10 minutes, 3 more guards were sleeping deeply in the dark corners of the station. They were not dead, but they would not wake up for hours. There was only 1 guard left. He was standing right next to Voss. I stepped out of the shadows into the dim yellow light of the platform lamp. "Voss," I said loudly. Voss spun around. His final guard quickly raised his rifle. Before the guard could aim, I pulled my revolver and fired a single shot. The bullet hit the guard's rifle, blowing it to pieces in his hands. The guard screamed and ran away into the desert. Now, it was just me and Voss. Voss did not look scared. He dropped his cigar and crushed it with his expensive shoe. He smiled a dark, evil smile. "Thorne," Voss laughed. His voice was smooth like poison. "I heard you were dead in the mud. You are very hard to kill, my boy." "You burned innocent families, Voss," I said. I walked slowly toward him. "You paid outlaws to steal their land, and you tried to kill me to cover your tracks." Voss opened his coat. He pulled out a massive, double-barreled shotgun. "You talk too much, Thorne," Voss yelled. He pulled the trigger. Boom! Fire exploded from the barrel. I dove to the ground and rolled fast. The wooden crates behind me exploded into 1,000 splinters. Voss pumped the shotgun. He aimed again. I did not use my gun. I grabbed the bone knife. I ran forward. Voss fired the second barrel. Boom! The shot went wide. It hit the side of the metal train. Before Voss could reload, I reached him. I slammed my body into his chest. We both crashed backward onto the hard wooden platform. The shotgun slid away into the dark. Voss was strong. He punched me hard in the face. My vision blurred. He grabbed my throat with his heavy hands. He squeezed tight. "You are just a dirty ranch hand." Voss spit in my face. "You are nothing." I could not breathe. Black spots danced in my eyes. The old wound on my back burned with fresh pain. I thought about the canyon. I thought about the vultures waiting for me to die. But then, I thought about Talasi. I thought about her kind eyes. I thought about the burning valley. I found a new strength. I pushed my arm up and drove the handle of the bone knife directly into Voss's ribs. Voss screamed in pain. He let go of my throat. I kicked him hard in the chest, sending him rolling across the platform. He hit the iron lockbox and fell flat on his back. He did not get up. He was grabbing his ribs, gasping for air. I walked over to him. I looked down at the man I once viewed as a father. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the silver coin with the star scratch on it. I dropped it onto his chest. "You dropped this in the canyon," I said, breathing heavily. Just then, loud horses galloped up to the station. It was the town sheriff and 10 deputies. The gunshot had woken up the town. The sheriff ran up onto the platform. He pointed his gun at me. "Drop the knife, Thorne," the sheriff yelled. "We thought you were dead." I dropped the bone knife. I pointed down at the iron lockbox. "Open the box, Sheriff," I said. "Look at the black book inside. You will see who the real monster is." The sheriff slowly opened the box. He pulled out the black book. He read the pages. His eyes grew wide with shock. He looked at Voss. "Arrest him," the sheriff told his deputies. "Arrest Voss for murder and theft." They dragged Voss away. He was screaming my name in anger, but I didn't care. It was over. The snake had no fangs left. The fire in the valley would stop. The Apache were safe. Justice was finally served. The next morning, the sun rose bright over red dust. The town was celebrating. I was a hero. The sheriff told everyone what Voss had done. The stolen money was going back to the families. Vespera found me standing by the horses. She looked beautiful in the morning light. She touched my arm gently. "You saved the town, Thorne," Vespera smiled. "You can stay here. You can take over Voss's ranch. You will be rich. We can finally build our house." I looked at her. I looked at the dusty buildings. I looked at the people who believed a lie for 6 months. This world was broken. It cared only about money and power. I pulled away from Vespera. I climbed onto a strong, fast horse I bought from the stable. "I am a dead man, Vespera," I told her. "Thorne died in the canyon." "Where are you going?" she asked. She looked confused and heartbroken. I looked up past the town. I looked at the high, red mountains in the distance. The smoke from the fires was finally gone. The sky was clear blue. "I am going home," I said. I kicked my horse and rode out of red dust forever. It took me 2 days to ride back up the hidden mountain paths. I brought a horse full of fresh blankets, clean water, and food. When I reached the hidden rocks, I jumped off the horse. I walked toward the cave. My heart was beating faster than it did during the gunfight. Suddenly, a shadow stepped out from the trees. It was Chatan. He held his spear. He looked at me for a long time. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. He nodded his head once in respect. He knew the fires had stopped. He knew what I did. I walked past him and went into the cave. Talasi was sitting by the small fire. She was crushing herbs with a stone, just like the first day I woke up. She stopped. She turned her head. When she saw me standing there, she dropped the stone. A beautiful smile broke across her face. Her dark eyes filled with happy tears. She ran to me and wrapped her arms tightly around my neck. I held her close. I breathed in the smell of pine and sweet smoke. "You came back to me," Talasi whispered into my shoulder. "The cowboy is gone, Talasi," I said softly, holding the only person I ever truly trusted. "But the man you saved, he is yours forever."